Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 25th day of October 2022. And now I want us to turn to the conversation about forming a government, because we already know that the president nominated several names to the cabinet. That was on 27th of September 2022. The process of vetting was concluded on Saturday, and the Committee on Appointments has been looking and reviewing the presentations before them and making a decision on what should be the fate of these nominees, 24 of them, including the Secretary to the Cabinet. Understandably, we get reports that there could be a bit of an issue, and especially on some 4 or 5 nominees. And the Daily Nation on the back page is reporting that members of the House Committee on Appointments from the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya side are uncomfortable with former Senator of Meru, Mithika Linturi, nominated to the docket of Agriculture. He told the vetting committee that he has 35 suits, or rather cases, not suits. Well, they're suits, but not suits. Then there's Penina Malonza for tourism. Partly because of her presentation, some of the members felt that she was not convincing about her preparedness for the docket, tourism and wildlife, and I think the heritage. Then Zakaria Njeru lands, and there's former MP of Malindi, Aisha Jumwa, nominated to the public service. She currently has a murder case going on in court, but she had a corruption issue that was withdrawn some 2 weeks ago. Then there's Professor Njuguna Ndungu, who has also faced the wrath of some members of parliament, questioning him on some of his processes while he was the central bank governor, and also how he left office. And let me begin with you, Senator Godfrey Sotsi, because yes, this report will be coming to the House. The committee was told that it has up to 20th, which is Friday this week, to conclude its deliberations, to report to the House, and the House has to make a decision by the 3rd of November. That should be next week on Thursday. With all what is going on, I don't know if you're able to consume the vetting process that was live on TV, but what do you think should happen, even as we hear of a possibility of a minority report? What is the best way to this?
Well, what I can say is that the members of the vetting committee, whether they are from Kenya Kwanza or from Azimio, they are under no obligation to pass all the nominees. In fact, they are under obligation as a standing orders to do the right thing. And some of us who watched the live interview on TV, you may have realized that there were issues with some nominees, integrity issues, and even competence issues. And I have read the names. They have talked about Mrs. Malonza, questioning her ability and competence. They have talked about Mithika Linturi, about the cases he has in court. And you remember even when Mithika Linturi was being interviewed, he said he has many cases. In fact, he said he has 35 cases. And the committee did not have time to go through each and every of those 35 cases. Then we have the issue of Professor Njuguna, who there is a parliamentary report, and I think in the 10th Parliament, 2012, ad hoc committee, that questioned his performance as a central bank governor, where some banks were making abnormal profits. Then we have a problem with Aisha Jumwa, which is known to all, the issue of the shooting incident in Malindi. So really, these are weighty issues that a parliamentary committee, which has constitutional obligation to perform on behalf of Kenyans, can just ignore. These are issues that need to come out. And I want to commend the Azimio team for raising these issues. And they are quite in order to bring a minority report. Whether that report is passed or not, it is going to be part of parliamentary records, because Parliament is a house of records and rules. So I want to encourage them to go ahead and do the report and seek to have that report passed by the House. And if the report is not passed, probably because of factors to do with numbers, then it's still going to remain part of parliamentary record that we can cite in future and say, we told you that this was not right, but you went ahead and passed these people. And again, the Kenya Kwanza administration has come out very clearly. You remember when the president was taking over, he clearly said that he is going to observe the rule of law. So this is a test for him. We want to see whether his side of the coalition can ignore valid sentiments by a section of the membership of the vetting committee and go ahead and pass the report without being sensitive to the views of the minority in the committee. So really, this is a major test to the Kenya Kwanza administration and to the president particularly, that these are individuals who still have questions around them.
How do you say that? Because if Parliament, in this case the National Assembly, approves those names, including those that there's a bit of controversy, does the president have any option?
Let me tell you, you know, Parliament, and especially Kenya Kwanza side, they are likely to be influenced to make a decision that is favorable to the government side.
Influenced by who?
Because the interest of the government is to ensure that all the nominees are passed. It's to ensure all the nominees are passed.
By who?
So, by the state. So, if they pass those people without regard to the issues hanging around them, then we will know that that issue of the president saying that he's going to observe rule of law, it is just cosmetic. So we really want Parliament
I'm asking you
to act independently.
If the sorry, what did you say?
We want Parliament to act independently of the executive.
But you just said it can't because it will be influenced by the state.
It is going to be influenced. This is the Kenya Kwanza side. Clearly, they are going to be influenced. In fact, if you look at the line of questioning, by the Kenya Kwanza members in that committee, they were asking leading questions. It's like they had a script. They had researched. They ask a question expecting a particular answer. If you look at the line of questioning of Azimio team, it was very, very strong and very targeted to the issues, the real issues that they wanted to come out.
Okay.
So that tells you what is going to happen on the floor. And even my colleague here knows that. They have clear instruction that government needs to settle down. We need these people in power, in offices. We need them to take an oath. And therefore, pass these people. We move ahead.
I hear you.
But Azimio is saying that let us do our work as parliamentarians.
Which is fine.
That our work is to ensure that we get the right people, suitable people into this position.
All right.
So the Azimio team is perfectly in order to come up with a minority report.
I had you clearly on that. Mheshimiwa Kuria, so what should happen? Because Senator Sotsi fears that the numbers game may override any other considerations. But what should happen? And there's that question that I asked Honorable Sotsi. If Parliament approves all these names, does the President have any other option but to appoint them?
You know, Sam, I was really hoping that our Azimio brothers and sisters would desist from opposition for the sake of opposition, that we're going to have more objectivity in what they say, in what they oppose, and not just for opposition for the sake of opposition. Let me remind my brother here, Senator Sotsi, that during the vetting exercise, our leader of majority, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, really put a former central bank governor, Professor Ndung'u, to the test on the issue of collapse of banks when he was the central bank governor. And this was because he was being objective, because it is true there's some banks that perhaps collapsed during the time that Professor Ndung'u was the governor for central bank, and we need to know what was his role, or is that something that could have been avoided? And this question came from the leader of majority, who, Honorable Sotsi, who doesn't even sit in our PGs and who does not sit in our meetings, claims that we have been called and whipped to make sure that these people get passed. We have heard the president say, not once or not two occasions, that he's not going to shield cabinet secretaries from the oversight of Parliament. We have even heard him propose an amendment to our standing orders to have specific time for cabinet secretaries to come to the National Assembly for questioning. And this is a departure from the past, where the previous cabinet secretaries were being told, you do not need parliament, you don't even be answerable to them. And that explains why at some time I think it was the Speaker of the Senate who had driven issue a summon, some of the cabinet secretaries because they gave excuse not to appear before the houses, before parliament, for answering of questions. On the issue about the issues that are raised, whether it is those cases, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Let these people not look so far away. If they claim to be, there's none of them who has a court case or a civil case or anything like that. If they just look around the table where there's mere people sit, they will see a lot of those leaders with ongoing court cases in court. And this has been ruled before, that if you have an ongoing court case, it doesn't make you guilty of a particular offense until you have been...
because you're also guided by precedents, have you seen a cabinet secretary in office and has an ongoing court case?
There has been before. I think there was the Honorable Kionjoro who had to resign or something. But let us give a slightly different context. Most of these people that are being, I think 50% of them, and that is Mithika Linturi and Aisha Jumwa, were contesting for office of governor. So what would have happened had these two individuals won their gubernatorial seats? Would they have executed the mandate as governors? And so why again do we have a change of heart when they are being appointed into the executive? These members of parliament that legislate on behalf of this country, quite a number of them have ongoing court cases.
But I'm specific.
So yes, the role of cabinet is just implement is that execution. And I'm saying if we have to do that, if we have to use this pedestal on the measurements of whether you call it a credibility test or whatever you call it for the executive, then you should also look at the other arms of government. So if we have members of parliament who legislate, who make laws, and they have ongoing court cases, then why then does it become, when you just shift your roles from making laws to executing them, again...
Once upon a time, Mheshimiwa Kuria, March 2015, Davis Chichil, Felix Koskei, Charity Ngilu, Kazungu Kambi, they are named in the list of shame of 175 names, and thereafter they had to step aside from office. Many years later, or a few years later, Henry Rotich is mentioned in a court case that is still ongoing, Arol Kimorel. They had to leave office, including Kamau Thuge. Then in 2018 July, you were in Parliament, right?
Yes.
Ben Chumo is nominated to be the chair of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. He had just been charged in relation to a matter of Kenya Power. They were not cleared by Parliament to sit in that office of SRC. Should Parliament turn a blind eye on the cases that some of these nominees are facing and say innocent till proven guilty?
And Sam, we're at that. Could you also mention the number of court orders that the cabinet secretaries that served in the Jubilee government between 2017 and 2022 disobeyed? Could you mention that I think it was one of the PS or CSs who was given a 6-month imprisonment by the court of law because of disobeying court orders? So if we are going to go with that, then we even had a sitting cabinet secretary who abused and failed to respect not one, not two, no, I think they were in tens of court orders and still served in office to the end of the term. And then on the case of Ben Chumo, Sam, and I think we tried to have this discussion, I think 2 weeks ago on the same. That time I was for the opinion that Ben Chumo should not have been approved as a chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission because of the gun case that he had that particular at court. What happens? A few years later, the courts withdraw and says the case against Ben Chumo. And I said here that we need to have a discussion about this law or this, what you call it, precedence or it's a law, about what happens. Because I said here that in other countries, in other mature democracies and more improved jurisprudences, someone like Ben Chumo could sue Because the reason why he was disapproved then as the chairperson of the Service Nomination Commission was just because there were allegations that were labeled against him. So when this was removed, therefore, could then therefore again go back and probably reinstate him or give him a chance that he should not have chosen, that he was denied just because he had an ongoing court case. And then let us even talks about, and I'm trying here not to be prejudiced by talking about matters in a court case. What if somebody wakes up tomorrow and because Senator Osotsi has been nominated for a particular position, and comes up with flimsy accusations against him, and there's a going court case? Then if we were to follow that route, then one of the best ways and one of the easiest ways to avoid any government nominee from assuming office, political office, was just to institute a court case against that person.
Okay, I hear you. Honorable,
I want to just answer one of your questions, because you're asking about cabinet secretaries who've been in office who've had court cases. But we can go a step further, because our former president was in office with an international criminal court case. So if we are actually going to start saying you can't be in office because of this and that, we could have also said we couldn't have a president, because he had the ICC case ongoing and while he was in office. So I think when someone has put allegations and you have not gone through the proper judicial process, been convicted, and even convictions, remember, you can be convicted. And I keep saying this, but as long as it's not to a certain period, you're still eligible to vie to sit in office. It's in the Constitution. So even that conviction has to surpass,
So should you use different bars to measure elective versus appointed?
I think my issue with Chapter 6 is that it was created to safeguard both the candidate and the institution. And if we have a problem with Chapter 6 of the Constitution and we keep throwing it every other time we are getting appointments, then I think as legislators, it is time to go and amend Chapter 6.
That's what I'm asking, because a certain threshold is required for...
The threshold has been stipulated in Chapter 6.
Just hold on.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the practicality of it. When people are running for political office, they are told that innocent till proven guilty and you have exhausted all avenues of appeal.
Yes.
So you can run for whatever seat, including
yes.
MC all the way to the president. But when it comes to an appointive seat, if someone is serving in cabinet, that's what we've seen the past 10 years. That's once you mentioned, that is once you're charged, you step aside to allow for the process to be concluded. Most of the time it takes so long and you lose that opportunity. So should you now change and say, as long as you have not been convicted or you have not exhausted all avenues of appeal, you should be nominated and appointed and also elected?
It's not about changing. What I'm saying is, for as long as we are following what is clearly stipulated in the Constitution,
and that's what I'm asking for.
Then the expectation, I had Osotsi saying that we are looking to see if the president will follow the law. He has been following the law. And by the way, for all these nominees, nobody has been convicted. They're all allegations, court cases that are ongoing. So there is no one point, even if he was to adopt and say, if whatever report comes out and say, we are going to appoint these people, there is nowhere where he's not following the law. And by the way, I find it a bit disturbing that we are not discussing the competencies of the candidates and that we are discussing narratives that have been alluded by the public court of opinion. Because if we were discussing competencies...
Senator Roba, all those matters were canvassed at the vetting committee, and I'm asking the question that is of controversy before the committee. But
and I've seen what they have actually alluded in the committee, that they're saying that there are some of the nominees that they are not comfortable with for one reason or another. In the case of the only one I would probably not agree with, but say I can understand why they feel uncomfortable with Penina Malonza, is because she did poorly on the interview. Really, that is a fact. We can't, there's no narrative around her interview. Her interview, she's probably not a good orator. She's probably, there are people who do poorly on interviews, but it doesn't mean that they do not have the skills and the competence. It just means that you don't interview well. I've been in the corporate world to an extent to understand.
What should happen?
So what I'm trying to say is, I can see, for the other nominees who the committee feels they are not comfortable, when you talk about Aisha Job, it's about the narratives around it.
You keep moving me around.
But I'm not moving you around. I'm giving you my thoughts. I'm giving you my thoughts, and I'm saying, when the committee comes out to say that listen, this is the report. Even if the minority side puts out a report and says that these people we are not comfortable with, I have to say I'm not comfortable with Osotsi going to tourism, because from the interview, Osotsi showcased he knows nothing about tourism. There is no proven track record of success in ABCD. They have to justify it in terms of capability and skill set. But I cannot come and say,
so you've said I
cannot come out and say, just allow me to finish this, that listen, I am not comfortable with Osotsi because venye watu wanaongea huko nje na hiyo D minus yake maybe hata perform. That is not, it's not a tangible, you know.
And let's be specific, because Penina Malonza is quoted, a member here is quoted as saying that she is timid and lacks coherence for the docket she has been nominated, which is crucial in marketing the country to the outside world. And of course, like you're saying, I mean, everyone was watching that interview. So what in your view should happen? You're saying two things, that maybe she's good when it comes to executing the work, maybe she's just not a good orator. What should happen?
That is my point is, even as they're looking to report on skill set, they should not heavily rely on that one interview. Remember, even for all other jobs, you have like at least 3 or 4 interviews, because there is an understanding in recruitment and in human resources that there are people who are not good orators, there are people who are not good, they don't do well in interviews. So I can't sit you in one sitting in front of the whole nation, 50 million plus Kenyans and the international community, and expect that in that moment, in that 40 minutes, that you should give me your 100%. So, no, the essence of vetting,
weighing the suitability.
The essence of vetting in that sense is to check that the candidate that has been proposed has some level of understanding in the work that they're going to do. So I'm not putting it off. I'm just saying, in those candidates that were there, for me, to be able to say that we are going to write a report stating that this candidate should not be, it should be purely based on the skill set and capability, and not on a public narrative that has been pushed. But and remember, and please allow me to finish. Remember that the narrative around now these cases, the allegations, you know, and the cases around the other nominees, they are still ongoing cases, and some of them are still narratives until these people have actually been proven guilty and convicted.
All right, Mheshimiwa Hassan, this must be the most difficult question to answer, on what threshold should be used for appointive versus elective. What, in your view, based on experience and precedence, is it time we depart from it, that a cabinet secretary is charged, you step aside? A cabinet secretary with a court case, what should happen, in your opinion?
Well, I must say that that is a very important question. And I speak also as a member of Parliament who served on the Appointments Committee in the last Parliament. And I think there's a big confusion here when members of Parliament speak passionately about appointments of the executive. They completely confuse their role. You know, there's the president, is the president of the country. He's got a job to do. He has selected his loyalist, and some of this selection disregards integrity and other issues. That is his job. He presents it to Parliament. Now, from the discussions that are taking place here, it seems parliamentarians are apologists for the executive. They defend whatever position the president takes without understanding what their role is. The role of Parliament is as a check and balance against the executive. Our job is to make sure that, in fact, we follow the rules that are laid down, and the Appointments Committee is one particular check, which interrogates, examines what the president has brought to the House, and then brings out any defects or any problems that may exist. It's not the job of parliamentarians to rubber stamp or praise what the president has done. So I think there's a misunderstanding here, and I think we need to... The other point that I also would like to question is the fact that the president had an opportunity to take, to look at the pool of expertise and of people in our country. We are 50 million after all. And there's an enormous expertise out there. And unfortunately, it seems that, that he could have selected many types of competences, many professional people with training and experience who are needed at this particular moment, critical moment in our country, to be part of the cabinet. But he chose not to. He has chosen loyalty, political allegiances, and so on, so that he can have a team that would work with him the way he wants it. So I think that the Appointments Committee and Parliament have their job cut for them. And I think we should raise our standards. The argument here is everybody is corrupt, everybody has integrity problems, it doesn't matter. Even our president was an ICC, the International Criminal Court person. These excuses does not mean that we should lower our standards to the point that we pack our cabinet with people who are really not competent. Even defending someone who had completely failed to raise to the occasion, like the nominee who has been mentioned of tourism, is that we are ready to look the other way because of our loyalty to the executive. And I think here the Azimio team should do what they need to do. The numbers are against them, but I think it is important that they should put their foot down and say, this is what we have observed. And this particular cabinet nominees are not deserving to be in our cabinet because of this factor or that factor. For example, I sat in the last Appointments Committee when we approved Richard Rashidi Chesa, who really didn't meet the criteria of a cabinet secretary. But the question the Appointments Committee had at that moment is that there is no criteria for a cabinet minister. We don't have an educational qualification. We don't have an experience and professional competence for a cabinet. The law does not specify.
But were you convinced that he was fit for the office? Did he convince you?
No, he didn't. For me, I was a dissenter, and although I was a member of the party in government, I didn't feel that he was deserving to be in our cabinet. But numbers...
And how did you vote?
No, the numbers... the committee is already rigged. Look at the committee.
The role of parliament, as you said, should not be about rubber
And you believe it?
No, I dissented. But it doesn't matter whether the whole of Azimio members of parliament dissent tomorrow or this afternoon when they bring this particular report, because the numbers are against them. Look, the committee is already rigged. The chairperson of the committee is the Speaker of the National Assembly, who is none other than Wetangula, who is one of the principals of the ruling party. The other team that sits there is the Deputy Speaker, the Majority Leader, the Deputy Majority Leader. So already this committee is tilting towards the government position, and nobody is going to embarrass the president by a member of that particular committee from the ruling party is going to embarrass the president by rejecting his nominee, however bad that nominee. The second element on this Appointments Committee and in Parliament is the fact that there are people who are not in Kenya Kwanza who would support the nominee because of their region, because of their ethnicity, or because of their gender. So, you know, there are many other factors. For example, I remember sitting in one of the vetting committees where there was an ambassadorial nominee who did not meet the cut as far as my observations were concerned. And one member sitting next to me leaned over and said, do you know this woman is from my county, and my county has never had an ambassadorial appointment since independence. My friend, are you going to let her drop out? Are you going to discriminate against our county and against the women of our county? So there are many factors when people look. There's a human factor, there's a political factor. But I think Parliament's job is to be above board, to set the standards high, and to make sure that we don't fill our institutions with incompetent people who might be loyal to the ruling party or to the president of the day.
I'll come to you, Senator Osotsi, but I want to hear from Mheshimiwa Kuria here. And be candid about this. How difficult is it for you to really be true to yourself versus true to party?
I'll say this without fear of contradiction. There are very many times, myself, let me talk about myself as Kuria Kimani. I have voted against a government decision, even when I was a member of that ruling party. And point in question was the fuel levy, I think, was on 2018. despite I was being whipped to vote in a particular way, I felt that that VAT was not worth it and it shouldn't have been passed. I was among the people that disapproved, and that time I was serving as a member of the Finance and National Planning Committee. I was one of the people that was strongly opposed to the approval of Ben Chumo as the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. So when I hear the Honorable MP here saying that we are taking government side, I have been on the record on calling out on the wrong when it has happened. However, the irony gets when we try to portray other people negatively, like the Honorable Member is trying to do here, when they on their side. If you remember, Sam, just before elections, the Honorable Raila Odinga nominated his cabinet. And who are his cabinet nominee? Munya, CS, was supposed to be in charge of agriculture or whatever else that was, I think, not even non-existent. Oparanya, Ngilu, Joho. So really, the people that Raila Odinga himself would have nominated into his cabinet were people that he would trust would execute his manifesto of the mandate as per what he wants. Now, the truth also is that these will be the president's men and women. They need to understand the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. These cabinet secretaries will not be implementing Azimio manifesto. They will be implementing the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. And therefore, they must understand what you mean by a creation of a hustlers fund. When we talk about that affordable housing project, they need to understand, they need to be articulate. They are the ones, most of them, that went with us across the country and had the needs of our people. They are the ones that made the promises that if we form government, we will help those sort of problems. And therefore, the expectation is we want to see them on the implementation side. So, with all due respect, you don't expect somebody who doesn't know where Kasarani is in Molo, or doesn't know where those Nizam, and that somebody, for example, has again I said that has an ongoing court case, and this has been proved by the case that you pointed in question, the case of Ben Chumo, does not necessarily mean that these people are guilty. Then, in any case, Parliament has also a chance to impeach these people if they do not raise to the occasion, as Honorable said, or does not perform their duties accordingly. And therefore, without condemning them and hard, let us give them a chance to work. And when if they do not serve us accordingly, if they come as being corrupt, let me tell you, the chairperson of Public Accounts Committee, which is really the strong oversight committee that oversees the executive, is headed by the opposition, and the majority of membership of this committee is the opposition. So they are going to bring those reports in the Parliament, and people are going to have a chance to interrogate them.
5 years later, actually.
Those things you're saying, fine, they're okay. But I'm just wondering, why go through that trouble while you have an opportunity that you can deal with the question decisively? And I'm not saying that you should not approve them. I'm just asking.
Yes.
Just hold on. I'm just asking because you've made a case that maybe some of these charges will not be proven ultimately. But is it time then, today, or even as you go to consider these names, that you depart from the precedents that you're named in a matter, you step aside, so that stops until you're proven guilty?
I would say this.
In cabinet?
I would say this. Part of our standing orders and within the rights of this appointments committee is to do a dissenting report. And it is again within the mandates of Parliament and within our standing orders to actually table that dissenting report. And this report will remain in the Hansard, will remain in the records of Parliament. The issues that when we were interrogating these people and had a chance to, for example, ask, is it true that you didn't clear your Form 4? Is it true that you do not have a degree certificate? All those issues come to public domain. And let me tell you, Sam, it's not a comfortable discussion to have if you have something that is glaring in your past that comes up in the open. It is also a good show for us Kenyans to know that whatever you do in the past will come to haunt you in the future. So you better have a good explanation to it. And it could also jinx your chances of appointment to respective positions that you would want to be appointed to. So it's about openness, it's about accountability, it's about making sure that you actually get to know, if you're a public officer, whether you're serving in the legislative arm of government or the executive arm of government, that the decisions that you make will come to haunt you in future. So the discussion that we're having here, I think, is very good towards our democracy and towards getting competent people to serve in our respective government offices.
All right. Well, still didn't get my answer, but...
Can I say something there?
Yes, go ahead.
You know, one thing we must understand where we are coming from. This practice of vetting is a borrowed concept from strong democracies like the US, where vetting happens. And if you look at the US example, you realize that the President of the United States of America has no obligation to appoint anyone into any position if the vetting panel. In fact, if there is any slight dissatisfaction or doubt about a particular candidate, the practice in the United States is that the president drops and provides another name. So in this case, you asked me what happens if Parliament passes the names, even with the minority report. Can the president go ahead and appoint? If the president really believes in the rule of law, he will not appoint those individuals. He will bring fresh names.
In the context of procedure, because the president nominates, Parliament considers those names, checks suitability.
Yes.
Then submits, makes a decision, submits the name to the president. Then ultimately the president appoints. It's just like what happens in the naming of Chief Justice.
Yeah, you see what I'm trying to say? If you look at American standards, if there is any slight doubt about a particular nominee, the President of the United States drops the name and brings another name. It should happen here in Kenya, even though the minorities are having issues. And the issues they are having are genuine issues. You've just had Senator Gloria here saying, even her, she has a problem with Malonza.
No, I didn't.
Her competence.
You
said questioned her competence. So if that is the case, why go ahead and make an appointment to this particular individual who is clearly incompetent?
No, for clarity.
Honorable,
for clarity, though.
Honorable Inturi.
No,
Honorable Inturi has said himself. In fact, if you listen to Wetangula, Wetangula even said, you are a nominee who is talking too much. Because he said, those are few cases. I have 35 cases. The committee did not have time to go through the 35 cases. So if the committee did not have time and they're having doubts, it is responsible for them to say, no, we have a problem.
Okay.
So it is upon the president to make a decision whether to go ahead and appoint these people, even though Parliament passes the name, or look at the minority report and say, no, but there is a problem here. Let me bring another.
Yet you'd have served as governor for Meru if you got elected.
Allow me for clarity. I did not say I have a problem with the nominee for tourism.
In other words?
No, allow me. I said that there are candidates in any job case scenario who don't interview well, but it doesn't mean that they do not have the skill set. And I think we are jumping the gun anyway because no report has come out and the president has not acted on anything. So I feel like there is this fear, oh, atapitisha, and you know, even that idea of saying that once you're on the side of the government, your job is to cheerlead. No, that is not the case, and particularly not with this president. Okay. William Ruto is not the type of person who even likes cheerleaders. So I believe, just as I'm sitting here saying that there are nominees who really, particularly this one for tourism, interviewed badly, is the same. We criticize each other. And I think we are jumping the gun because, let me also say, so if a report comes out from Parliament that actually all nominees have been approved, but a minority report comes out that they have a problem with A, B, C, D person, and then the president decides to ignore the Parliament one that approves everyone and says, okay, because these few people have not agreed with this one, I am bringing in new names. What are you going to say? So we are jumping the gun.
That would be a good thing.
That would never happen.
No, it is a possibility because,
never happen.
because it's the same. The people say, listen, the people saying it will never happen are the same people who never thought that a special police service unit would be disbanded and that a sitting president would say there have been extrajudicial killings by this unit. So you can never say never,
Senator,
particularly with William Ruto. You can never say never.
The question I'm asking is it allowed in law? Because it's a chain.
What is allowed in law is that the president forwards names.
Right.
The same way they have a cabinet reshuffle. The same way they have someone is dropped after 2 years from cabinet. You know, the president is the person who appoints the ministers. So I'm just saying, let's not jump the gun. There's no report that has come out. The president has not acted on anything. The only thing that we have been subjected to is the interviews. And based on that interview, I have also said there is 1 or 2 candidates who did not interview well. Doesn't mean they do not have the...
All right, Senator, you've clarified.
Yeah.
I think Senator Soti has got what you're saying. But Mheshimiwa Hassan, because you've been in the House for more than 10 years now, and you've witnessed the vetting, like you said, in 2017, but also you were there in 2013 when the first cabinet of President Kenyatta was processed in Parliament. Have you seen any difference? How people appear before the vetting committee, how Parliament makes a decision, but ultimately when they get to work and start to execute their mandate, because this government has made several promises. Is there a relationship between how they appear at the vetting and ultimately how they perform? Can you tell a good performer at the vetting, or is it just a process that is in law? Oh, no, you do. I think there are some people who are competent in their jobs. They know what needs to be done, and they perform very well. And there are some people who've been pushed politically for various reasons, because of the region or because of the ethnicity. They have been put into that list of appointments because of pressure, public pressure. And they don't perform very well. But once you have appointed a person, that person is in office. And I think the whole idea of vetting public figures, public appointments, is to be able to identify the weak ones and to be able to show that, in fact, they may not be the right people. As they have said, in mature democracies, people withdraw from appointments like that because either they have something wrong, or they don't meet the criteria, or they have a scandal. It doesn't matter whether they are proven guilty or not. Many people withdraw from public appointments because they don't want to face that pressure, that embarrassment of being vetted, not only because of their own personality, but some of them have families, they care about their families. But in developing countries like Kenya, people don't seem to care about that. They're quite happy to see their dirty linen washed in public. They don't protect their families, they don't protect their integrity, and they push to the extreme. And I think there's something better than that. For example, the example I gave of Echesa was that he was not competent, and in the end, he was chucked out of the cabinet. Should we have had him in the first instance, is the question that I asked myself. And then there was another case where we had actually rejected a candidate as an ambassador, for an appointment of an ambassador, because of some technicalities. And Parliament, it went into the plenary, and it was approved that that person should not be appointed. But nevertheless, the president went ahead and quietly appointed that person. Are you talking about Mwenda Mwenzi? I don't want to mention names, but there are cases where even the executive breaks the law because they want that particular person so desperately to be in that position. So what I wanted to say is that, in fact, we need to improve our standard, and we need to push to a standard where... How do you do that? Well, the control I think, first of all, the appointing committee, the appointing body, the president had an opportunity here to select from a wide pool. There are many competent Kenyans. There are many good Kenyans who can do the job of the cabinet. Why do we limit it to this special elite political class of politicians? Why don't we go outside the box and select people outside that particular pool? But why don't we do the same for our civil service? Why don't we choose the best for our country rather than being tied to a small pool of loyalists
politicians. I think our country can do better. No, other countries have an opportunity to choose.
Mheshimiwa Hassan, what do you do to political reality? That you run a campaign to a certain direction, there are people who work with you. There's true.
No, in fact, our tradition in the past has been we never used to have people who have been rejected by the public in general elections appointed to cabinet.
No, it's
we
not
never used to have that tradition.
No, I'm just cannot call a person who loses
this is a slap.
election.
Let me just. It is a slap on the face of the Kenyan public. You don't respect the citizen. They have already decided not to choose this particular person for a particular elective office, and you bring that person through the back door. I generally disagree with that, whichever government is doing.
Hassan, I don't know that
previously under the Kenyatta Ruto government.
Just hold on. Is that truly factual? Because Charity Ngilu lost the Senate seat in 2013 in Kitui. She was named to the cabinet.
Yes, I don't agree with that.
Najib Balala.
I don't agree with that. I feel that, in fact, the president should respect the Kenyan public by not choosing people who have been rejected in elections for cabinet positions or for even diplomatic positions.
Allow me to strongly come to the defense of
and it's nothing to do with the Ruto government.
No, listen.
It also happened under the Kenyatta.
Listen,
we've had you.
Yes. A candidate, first of all, who puts themselves to the electorate and says that I'm vying for this particular seat and then does not win is not a reject. That is not a reject. You know, when you start saying that, that is why we don't have youth and women participating in elective politics. Because what you are essentially saying is that if there is a chance that you don't win that election, you automatically become a reject to society. First of all, that notion is wrong. Then the other thing is that if you don't win an election, it does not take away your skill set. It doesn't take away your skill set. You see, for me, I'm a technocrat in my right. I have a background before I became a politician. When I, offered myself to vie for MP of Bobasi constituency and I did not get it, it doesn't mean that suddenly, because the people in Bobasi did not elect me as a member of parliament, so suddenly now I cannot be a youth advocate. Suddenly I do not have competencies to empower the youth. Suddenly I cannot serve in cabinet. Suddenly, that's complete hogwash. And in fact, if you ask me, when you're picking your cabinet, you cannot just pick technocrats because they do not understand the political vision that you sold to the electorate. You can't just pick an accountant who is sitting somewhere at now we are going to put you in the finance ministry. This person did not even go down to the grassroots to understand what it took to convince the electorate to vote for you. So those political appointments are 100 and should be 100% political appointments by people who have worked through the campaign because they understand the political vision, but then the skill set, the technocrat part of it should be assessed. And to call someone who has lost, I cannot wait for you to lose an election so that we can now call you a reject who cannot even offer anything.
100% of people participated in elections.
Self-interest. She's speaking about her self-interest.
No, it's not about a self-interest. I'm representing
the political elite.
I'm representing so many women. No, I'm passionate about this. I'm representing so many women who actually shy off from offering themselves in electorate because of this kind of talk. Because it's like, oh, unajua nikienda na nisishinde, suddenly it will take away all my success, all my achievements. That should not be the case.
There are 50 million Kenyans out there who can serve and work for this country.
That is the reason youth
are very fearful. A very small, tiny pool of politicians.
We are waiting for you to lose so we can now say you are a reject.
Senator Roba, no one can hear what you're saying.
Oh, no one can hear what I'm saying?
Because you're speaking at the same time. So I'm looking at the list of 24 nominees. Seven of them ran for election and didn't win. It's Mithika Linturi, it's people like Moses Kuria, there's Ezekiel Machogu, there's, who's this? Penina Malonza, there's Florence Bore, and there is Aisha Jumwa and Susan Wafula. They were all seeking for elective seats. They were not successful. But there are four that sought those offices and one. That is Aden Duale, Alice Ohome. There's one, who's this? Murkomen, Kipchumba Murkomen. And Soipan Tuya. Soipan Tuya was a nominated, not elective seat. But they also headed to the cabinet. Honorable Kure, you wanted to say something so that we wrap up this, as well as Senator Sotsi.
Yes, and I really want to emphasize that once you become a politician, and I don't know why this discussion always comes up, it doesn't make you stupid. It doesn't make you incompetent. It doesn't make you lose your skill set. Sam, I'm still a certified public accountant with good standing with the institute. I still hold my bachelor's degree and my master's in finance. So the fact that I represent the people of Molo constituency as a member of parliament, whether in the past, now, or in the future, does not really affect my competence as a finance expert and as a CPA. So the notion that if you go to an election and you lose, then you are sent to political and leadership and oblivion is really false. And we should really discourage this, especially if we have to have a pool of skill set even in our National Assembly and in the executive. Because what happens is that so many competent Kenyans fear to get into elective politics. In fact, most of them that have got very good careers wait until their retirement to go to vie into elective politics. Because once your career is interrupted by vying for a political office and you lose, and you have a ranking member here reasoning like that, then you make people like would be bankers and all these other professionals in the field shy away from going to politics. Okay. And once you offer yourself to elective politics, once you offer yourself into elective politics, it gives people a chance to elect you or not, and it is their democratic right. So let me show you the point. The point is, Honorable...
I didn't know you had that.
Yes, I had. The point is when you say that because someone vied in an election and lost is a reject, and they don't
I didn't say they were a reject. I said
call them political reject.
We have a pool of skills out there that are not considered because of them. And this is nepotism.
In any case.
It is this entitlement, this culture of entitlement.
In any case.
That because I'm a politician, I'm entitled to be in the cabinet.
Out of 50 million Kenyans.
CAS, I'm entitled to be a PS.
Out of 50 million Kenyans.
To be an ambassador.
Out of 50 million Kenyans, out of 50 million Kenyans, let us accept, we can only have 24 cabinet secretaries, for example. 22. We can only have 22 cabinet secretaries out of 50 million Kenyans. So irrespective of which pool you pull these 24 from, you're not going to dominate everyone. So precluding, these people do not take a chance of anybody else.
You've made your point. Senator Sotsi, your final
Thank you.
Well, I want to divert from this line of debate.
Please do.
You asked a very important question, that how do we relate the performance, the vetting, and the actual doing of the work. I think that's very important, and I want to say that I was extremely impressed by the performance of Moses Kuria during the interview. He actually surprised many. He seemed to understand the scope of his work, and basically he talked like someone who is already in the ministry. So we hope that people like Moses Kuria and even Murkomen did so well, Soipan and the lady Nakumicha. We hope that they are going to do the work as expected of them based on the interview that they had, so that Kenyans get the value of their money. And when I talk about this, you can see all these are people close to the president. And as in Azimio, we have no problem with them because they did so well. But we get to have a problem with the nominees who have questions around them. And I think the president should pick this and do the right thing. If I was the president, William Ruto, I would look at the minority report and provide new names of people to be vetted again. And that's the spirit of vetting, because we don't need vetting if at all it's going to be garbage in, garbage out, that everyone who appears in the panel...
Senator, I asked that question. No one has given me an answer, because I asked whether the president is authorized to depart from a decision of parliament. I'm not sure you're giving me an answer, so...
the president is the appointing authority.
So he can...
He can't change, because he's the appointing authority. It's like saying, once these people have been appointed, what happens...
Is the decision of parliament binding?
It is a process. It's part of the constitutional process. But the president, at the end of the day, is the appointing authority. He may decide to sack these people a day after Parliament has approved and bring new names.
To answer
that is provided for in law.
It's not binding. It's not binding. It's supposed to guide the president on. It's supposed to give a general feel that they are competent. They're not, but it's not binding.
Okay, all right.
Sam, can you allow me to say something?
No, I can't because you're
too much. In fact, I have not finished my point.
I will not. Thank you so much, Senator Godfrey Sotsi from Vihiga County, Senator Gloria Oroba, nominated Senator, Mheshimiwa Yusuf Hassan, and Mheshimiwa Kuria Kimani for making time for us to have this conversation. There's still a pending question that I didn't get an answer on whether we should be departing from the precedent that cabinet secretaries who are mentioned in cases, they step aside. Should those that already have cases are sent to office or assume office, or what should happen? It's a question that is now before the National Assembly, and a decision should be made by the 3rd of November. My name is Sam Gituko. See you some other time. Bye for now.